as we turn into a bit of a discussion, so I am thrilled to be here. Strong supporter, longtime member of the Simcoe County Law Association, and I had the opportunity to be there. Yeah, woot woot in the back, absolutely. And yeah, so every time I would come to a seminar, I would come to a conference like this, I would learn something. And so the thing I learned today is that the Law Society asks people. I didn't know that.
Okay, don't let that get out.
Yeah, okay, well, I was thinking to myself, if I said that and the Toronto Star was here, the headline would be. So look, I'm thrilled to be here, and thanks, Doug, for the kind introduction. It's nice to see familiar faces. I did get a chance to talk with several people last night and hear some of the concerns, and they're real concerns, and they're all across Ontario. They're not all localized. There are some localized concerns. We got into some of those last night too. But I just want to thank everybody for being here, and really thank everybody for rowing with us in the same direction as we went through that COVID period, because it really was everybody moving together, whether it was the judiciary, the practicing lawyers, FOLA, and others who gave practical input so that we could get there. And so I just wanted to start with a note of acknowledgement that I really do appreciate it. However, I think we all know we're not done. We've really just started. Because as we start to do things, we have to, of course, finish them. And sometimes they don't land the same way you meant them to. So the iterative conversation isn't over. We really are just getting started. And I look forward to hearing from FOLA, and Katie, of course, provides a good practical ability to articulate some of the concerns that you have. So thank you again for that. I know you do the work day in, day out. I turned a key in a door and stood last in line to get paid for 20 years. So I know what it's like on the front lines. I don't think I'm allowed to still be a certified specialist. But I was a certified specialist in real estate. That was my focus. And certainly I love the practice of law. I love the interaction with the clients. I have to say now I have no accounts receivable, however, but I am on a fixed income. So it's a bit of a challenge. But no, look, I really do appreciate it, and the long association with FOLA has been very, very helpful. One of the great things about being in the space that I am is the privilege of being part of conversations about how we move the system forward. And the Attorney General's office is very much, can be very much, isn't always, I believe should be, nonpartisan in many, many ways, because it really is a legal advice space. And so when I first became Attorney General, I phoned all the former AGs, had a wonderful conversation with Marion Boyd, who has just recently passed, unfortunately. Wonderful lady, and I actually met her through the Law Society, through sitting on panels and that sort of thing. Of course, Chris Bentley and others. So it really has been a chance, and those former AGs have been very helpful in terms of reaching out when they thought appropriate to give me sort of heads up, guidance, that kind of thing. So I just wanted to reiterate to Doug's early point that it doesn't have to be a partisan space. Now, I do have a job to do, and I do have to get reelected, and I do have to represent my constituency, and I'm very proud to do that. This last election, which feels like a lifetime ago, my team, we knocked on 25,000 doors. That's where you really hear where people are at. And we're in interesting times. I mean, the struggles that you've gone through for your clients, when I'm knocking on doors, I'm hearing from those clients, and the struggles and their inability to access the system. And everything that I try to do as we reform the judicial system is really focused on them. Now, you're caught in the middle, but it's really about them, because the system in history has often been developed really for the users of the system, defined as the lawyers and the judges. And we're challenging that. We're changing the way that change is happening. We've actually created muscle memory on how we can approach an issue and how we can develop change, because it's really about the end user. And sometimes you can do incremental change, and sometimes you just have to change it. Some of the hesitation that people have in change is they don't know why the rule's there in the first place, so they're afraid to touch it. And that's not me. The first thing that we can do, if you think there's an issue, like, I'll tell you, I don't understand why you have to show up for first appearance in criminal court if you're just getting your disclosure, if you're represented by a lawyer. Because the only time I ever went to criminal court was when my partner was double booked. And the judge knew that he could get me up first and out because I wasn't doing anything substantial. So those kinds of processes, we need to challenge those and strip them away, not for us, not because I was fussed going to court. It was kind of fun, actually, but because it's not good for the client. It served no purpose except to run up cost. And that's the conversation we need to have. I'm way off my notes here, but this is important stuff for me. Because I want to convey how you can help me, how you can help me help your clients. And we have to change processes, and we are doing those. But we also have to make investments. And that's the government's job, to make those investments. And so we have. We have to make investments in infrastructure. I want to make sure I get the number right. I guess I'll start with our Justice Accelerated strategy, which we brought in last year. And the purpose of that is to break down longstanding barriers in the system, systemic barriers, to overhaul processes, bring services online, and bring them closer to the people who actually need them. And it doesn't matter where you live, whether it's Niagara Falls or North Bay or other spots. Everybody needs access to the same system with the same resources. And a key aspect of that is the court digital transformation. And the Court Digital Transformation Initiative is something you will hear more about over the next while. It will be the single most significant step in the digital evolution of justice in Canada. We're working on it actively now. I talked to a few people about it last night. It's replacing the outdated paper-based procedures. It's going to create an online platform, manage cases, documents, scheduling will be in that. And here's one of the historical things about it. As many of you who are practitioners know, we have the OCJ and we have, the SCJ, and there's family in both and there's criminal in both. They run separate systems. Now, if you were to start from zero, you would never do that. So we're not doing that. And we have the concurrence of both Chief Justice Mazanov and Chief Justice Morowitz that they have agreed that we will have one system. And so that, I think, is transformational. And it's going to allow us to bring product in that will serve your clients better because it's easier for you. And the fact that we're embedding scheduling in that is going to be seismic. I really believe that's going to change. Now, I know people, I watch Twitter, so I don't respond most of the time, but I do read it, and we do pick up ideas from there. So I know about the court filing challenges, actively engaged in that. I see people like, why can we not just schedule things? Like, can nobody run a doodle poll in government? Like, what is going on? Yes. So recognizing you have a problem is the first step, they say. So we are actively working on those pieces because they are solvable. Part of the challenge in government when we do transformation, and this is not just automation, as Susskind would say. So I don't know if anybody's read Richard Suskind's work. He's great. We're not just automating. We're not just taking this paper and scanning it, and now, of course, we're automated. No, we're transforming. We're changing how things happen. And some of you will have seen that in the estates world, if any of you practice in estates. Took a ton of forms and got it down to about 8 forms. You can now, file for probate online. It's by email. Now, when I first came in as AG, because I was a practicing solicitor, I had lawyers that I know say to me, oh my goodness, it's taking like 8-10 months to get a probate out of this office. Like, what is going on? So I asked the question. I got a little report on how long it took in different spots. I said, this is crazy. For those of you that do real estate, when you file for Terranet, within 20 days you get some sort of answer to fix or not fix. You keep your filing date and you move on. And the regional differences in probating were really just part of the human nature of people. It was very much the individual office, not the process. And so I said, well, why not with Terranet? When I file a document, I get a phone call from Thunder Bay or wherever the clerk happens to be, and we deal with the issue and you're done. Why can't we do that with estates? And they said, I don't know, never thought of it. So that's what we did. And we put the resources to bear in different spots to help the most backlogged spots. And we're getting there, right? It's just empowering the system to do what it already knows how to do. The tools are already there for a lot of it, but letting them do it, not being afraid of the unknown consequence. Because I have to say, I'm pretty proud of my team. I'm very proud of the department. There are many things they did. because we set the stage for change. We told them what we wanted. We didn't necessarily say exactly what we wanted in every instance. I was in a meeting with the online case search tool that we now have. I don't know if anybody uses that or not. I hope you do. It used to be you'd have to walk into the courthouse, little kiosk, find the thing, and I said, COVID hit, we closed the courts, closed court buildings, so you couldn't get at the kiosks. And so I said, why is this not online anyways? I don't get it. Well, we have a project for that. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, and it's going to have stuff added. I said, yeah, how long is that going to take? Well, it's 5 to 7 years. I said, well, let's do a Zoom call with the programmers on Tuesday. And so from my experience, and with the Qantas Club, I used to run their auction, I used to run their database. I said to them, you guys know your business, you're the programmers, but I think, from my experience, there's a spreadsheet in behind there, and you can just run an API from here to there. I said, yeah, we could do that. But then we can't do that. I said, okay, let's deal with the other later, let's actually move forward. And they did, within days. They just need to be empowered. Well, out of that meeting, about 2 weeks later, I'm in another meeting about something else. And at the end, they said, oh, by the way, the unit has uploaded and digitized 400 more forms. I said, well, what? That's the biggest part of this meeting. They did it without sort of being given direction. They gave it because they knew the direction we were going. And it's that kind of initiative we want to encourage. So the more you're talking about practical solutions, they see it as well. And then they take pride in it, and we all do better. So there's some good stuff coming. I know we have challenges. I talked last night a little bit as well about the churn with court service staff, and I was visiting with the Welland Courthouse yesterday, and they said to me, you realize that with the churn of staff, that we actually have people who are now going back to in-court, the court service division, people who are going back to in-court. They've never done it before. They've only ever done online. So now we have a learning curve to go back to the way. So we've got some challenges there. Again, very aware of it, working on it. We will get there. But really, really proud of the support that I've received from my colleagues in government to make investments, whether it be digitizing courthouses, which we're moving along at a pretty good clip. And again, we don't always get it perfect. I was up in Pembroke and we were chatting with that last night. So not perfect, but we've got the base, and now we can fine tune and get things going the way they're supposed to be. So I'm really excited to be able to announce soon more initiatives that we're doing for rural areas, for northern areas, for areas that really have been very underserved in terms of the justice system. And I got in trouble one time, well, not in trouble, but they didn't love that I said to a reporter, this is early on in COVID, but I said, this is like operating in Pioneer Village. We have to do something. We have to move this stuff forward. And when I talk to practicing lawyers, they know. You know how antiquated some of the stuff is. So I'm gonna stop there because I know there's a couple of questions and I have a guess at what some of them are, but I just want to thank you for rowing along with us, raise issues. You will not offend me by criticizing or critiquing parts of the system, but let's move to a solution on them. And I got pretty thick skin. I'm a lawyer and a politician at this point, so it's pretty good. But there's lots more to come, and so I'll stop there. And I think we're taking questions. So thank you, merci, Megwich.
And there's one hand.
Good morning. I'm Melissa Fedson, president of the Halton County Law Association, so I'm sure you know where this is going. But I noted your comment about how important it is to invest in infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so I would just love an update on what's happening with the Halton Courthouse.
Well, great question. Not a surprise. I'm glad you led with Halton so I could think about it. No, honestly, the decision on Halton was a tough one. And what was happening when I came in, it had been incubated for a couple of years, and the cost escalation was phenomenal, to the point where, and I was sitting in a meeting, I remember early in my term, and we talked about Halton, and I said, the net gain is going to be 4 courtrooms. Now they're going to be a better space and all that stuff. But the net, closing Burlington and redeveloping Halton is going to be a net 4 courtrooms. The cost for doing that really was not proportional. I said, what we need more rooms like the one that we're sitting in, not this one, but a sophisticated boardroom, where judges can interact with, like, that's where we need to be going. But this project was so far along that I felt like may not have any ability to shift gears on it. And then COVID came, and we had to do something. We got another cost escalation, and it was getting pretty close to $1 billion by the time we were in that space for really a net 4 courtrooms. So we made the tough decision. I made the tough decision. I will own it. I made the tough decision. We need to invest in the entire system. I need that money to be able to improve all of it, but not to leave Halton alone. They've done significant remediation in terms of some of the health and safety stuff, but there is more coming. I'm waiting on a report, and I should have it probably within the next 2 weeks about which path we go forward with. And I may or may not have to go to Treasury Board and others to unlock pieces to get there, but there will be a significant redevelopment with Halton. So it's not getting totally ignored, but it's taken a little bit to get us to the space. Yeah.
Good morning.
Morning.
Terry Brandon, you know me. I stood before you long ago about the disclosure issue, and I really commend you again for the electronic disclosure hub, and that's been very, very helpful. However, we don't have any corresponding legal aid increase in terms of the 10 cents that you get for photocopies, and legal aid has just decreased. We had 100 photocopies, now we only get 50, and some of us need that paper still. We really do, for the barrister work we do in the courtroom. And back in the day, the RCMP or the local police put together beautiful briefs, page number, the Crown got them, we went to court, we did our jobs. Now I have to do all of that administrative prep, and I pay my staff for that out of my own pocket, and I can't even get compensated for my photocopier. So it was a great concept. We need money into the budget for legal aid to correspond with the money previously paid by the government somewhere else. And that takes me, frankly, and with respect, into the reality that we have seen no increase for legal aid funding. We've seen no tariff increase, no block fee increase in over 7 years. And then properly so, we had that 5 years where we saw the increases. And I was corrected earlier for being remiss by that side of the room, and I thank them for that, because I can raise it with you. Prior to that, we were 15 years or so with no increase whatsoever, and yet everything's gone up. The staff costs has gone up, utilities, the gasoline in the vehicle, everything's going up. And after I gave my legal aid presentation, I'm sorry you weren't here, because there were things in there for you, and maybe we could speak later if you have time. But I just want to point out that I quickly took a look at what the president and CEO of Legal Aid, what's happened with him. And I'm able to see from 2019, he earned 264,406 pennies. And in 2020, he was up $275,592.37 pennies. So up $11,192 in 1 year. And yet we're out here as the legal aid private bar certificate lawyers with no pension. We pay all our own overhead. We're doing the work. We're trying to get things moving through the court. And yet we're not seeing any sort of proper compensation. And all the administrative costs has been removed. And legal aid demands more administrative information. So lawyers like myself, we can't delegate that to someone else, and I have to take lawyer time to do administrative work in order to practice for legal aid. And I appreciate the $72 million this year to Crown and Court operations for new hires. And that's good for the court, for the justice system, moving things through. But we need corresponding money on the legal aid side in order to continue to avoid self-reps and to save money to the system overall. Somehow I don't know what's happening, and I know we continue to lobby, and I just really hope you're hearing. I started with the little 10-cent photocopy and then took it through to this, saying there's no increase, not a penny. We need your help.
So we can definitely talk about workflow and what's happening in that space. It is an active current conversation. We've had some, for anybody, I don't know if anybody here is connected to the clinics. When I say we, the Legal Aid Board has given a 2%, notice of a 2% increase for next year. So although nominal, it's helping some of them with pressures, the inflationary pressures. So yeah, let's talk about workflow. It is an active conversation. We have a relatively new chair at Legal Aid, very practical. Many of you will know Steve Pengelly. He knows our industry. He knows how the system works and how it doesn't work. So I'm looking forward to some really practical pieces there. The good news, quite frankly, for Legal Aid at the moment, although your costs are going up, the revenues of the Law Foundation are going up because of that. So, but that's a bit of a false piece, and we can talk about that too. I don't like that they budget off a variable item, but that's a whole different issue. So no, let's. I genuinely want to understand, and I know the tariff is an easy thing to understand. It just hasn't changed. But the other pieces, the workflow piece, I want to understand as well. So I will follow up with you. Yeah.
Good morning, Honourable Member Downey. Jane Robertson from actually Owen Sound. And that's a tough act to follow, Terry. Man, that was well done. This one's off the cuff. And it has to do with the court support staff, sir. And I guess what I would do is make a vicarious plea on behalf of everyone who's in the room and all the constituents that they represent. But mostly, from my point of view personally, it is really for the court staff. I sit as a small claims court judge in addition to my my practice, and so I have a fair amount of contact with the court staff that ordinary practitioners don't have the benefit of. Court staff actually talk to me about, you know, their lives, their work, their working conditions, and it's simply this: can we please have a better funding model for the retention of court staff, the retention and the training? Currently, in small communities at least, what's happening is court staff are being hired and they're expected to train in every aspect of the positions that are behind the counter. And I probably speak for most people in this room. You know, when I first encountered my, first month or 2 months of my civil procedures course in law school, I thought, good Lord, what have I got myself into? And these people that are behind the counter, they're basically having to manage that same process without any of the either motivation or the training that we had, and to then be shuffled around through the court system itself and expected to manage all of these other tasks, not knowing when they're going to get back, if they did a training on this particular piece, when they're ever going to get back to that piece and actually have to put those skills to work, which if they were anywhere near my age, they would have long since forgotten anyway. So to boil it down, the hiring of staff on short-term contract basis and to then have them shuffle around through all of these systems is creating just a huge problem with how materials are coming into the court, what's happening with them after that, how they're getting pushed back out to the judges, or they're not getting pushed out to anybody except back at us because someone had their own version of what constituted a rejection of a document, etc. I don't think it's unknown to anyone in this room. That is across the province that we have those kinds of problems with court staff. And I'm not suggesting that it's court staff's problem. I think that it is a funding problem and it's a management problem that is addressed if someone would just turn their mind to it. So I'm asking you to put it on your radar, sir, because we have to have those lay people who are going to help us to make the court system actually work properly.
Yeah, no, it's a great topic, and it's a topic that I actually care a lot about. It's actually a structural problem as much as anything. When I was in university, I spent 2 summers as a filing clerk. So I was the person you were filing over the counter to, that was in Barrie. And I did estates, I did family law, I did small claims, and what did I know? Not very much, because the training was pretty minimal. Great people I worked with. What they knew they had learned on the job, and sort of created processes and did things. We're moving to a space. Well, actually, after those couple of summers, I went off and did a degree around the corner here in judicial admin, like public admin, but for courts, and then got a job as a registrar. So the clerk that you work with as a deputy judge, I was that. That was my job. And so I spent time doing that, and then I went to law school. So I have really, really strong feelings and beliefs on how the system should function. It is not sustainable to have part-time, short-term contracts running our legal system, because they are the linchpin in terms of the operations. Part of the challenge with our current system, and it was the same way when I was there, if the court only sat for 4 hours, I only got paid for 4 hours, and then I went home. And that's fine for a young single guy, but it's not sustainable for the kind of talent that we require now. The system has become much more complicated. What we ask of them is much more complicated. So I don't want to keep saying we're working on it, but actively engage in that. This is something that I believe I can fix, that another attorney general may not be able to, because of my experience in that space. So it is a high priority. We need to fix that. Yeah.
Thank you. So I practice in Norfolk County, and since 2000 I've been doing child protection work representing parents. It's a huge percentage of the time in the courts is dedicated to child protection matters. Recently there have been more judges appointed, more trial time assigned for it. Children's Aid Society seem to have added to their legal departments and so on. But I see fewer and fewer lawyers getting into representing parents. And I can only think this has something to do with the poor compensation that there is for this area of practice. I was speaking with our local family court judge. He'd been sent to sit in Kitchener for a while, and he told me that in Kitchener they had 2 lawyers there who regularly represented parents in child protection proceedings, and they recently had a bunch of judges appointed there too. They now have more judges presiding over child protection cases than there are lawyers representing parents in the cases. And many of these cases don't just involve 2 parents, they involve more than 2 caregivers for the children and so on. So these cases are complicated. They deal with very fundamental legal rights of people and parents, and they're getting bogged down with delay to the point that, because of people who aren't represented. And so to the point where you're getting to judges looking at these cases and saying, well, it really doesn't matter now whether you hit your kid 24 months ago. Now the kid is bonded to the foster home. And it also seems that with the funding of the Children's Aid Societies, they're offering less and less access to the parents. And whereas they used to be, you could get a 4-hour visit once a week, you're now getting a 1.5-hour visit once a week. So it seems to me that we have a system for child protection, and it doesn't work unless everyone's represented. So I think there has to be something done to encourage practitioners to get into this area and stay in this area, or we're going to have a lot of injustice done to children.
That's interesting. That's a workflow that I was not on my radar. So that's very interesting. Let me ponder some of that. Interesting.